Good morning. Welcome to the June 27th meeting of the Savannah-Chatham County Public School Board Audit Committee meeting. I will call the meeting, seeing that we have quorum, I will call the meeting to order. We'll give Dr. Watts just 30 seconds to sit down. Good morning. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as printed.
Second. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the agenda for this morning's meeting. All in favor? Aye. Aye. The agenda is approved. Leah?
All right, the first item is the internal audit status report. I'm not going to go through all this. I want to highlight on page 2 the summary of reports update. Next month, we will be bringing you the full report, but I want to provide an update to you. The percentage of completed recommendations, as you can see, is increasing, and that's what you would expect to see if they are completing those their actions, and that supports the percentage of management actions still outstanding. As you can see, that has also decreased, so they're in a good, healthy trend, as well as the percentage of management's request for a completion date change. As you can see, that's 0%, so management is still on target to completing their actions based on the information provided to us. And also the percentage of management actions still open, which means the due date has not occurred, is still remaining stable. On the next page, on page 3.
Hold on just one second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dr.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I have a question about not doing the audit for New Hampstead K-8. I've always perceived that area as being most populous, and so having a lot of activity and a lot of numbers that we might need to examine. Can you tell me a little more about why that got removed from priorities?
Right, and I was about to jump into that. Thank you. So on page 3, as we go through the areas, so the New Hampstead K-8, we did not have the employee resources to complete that for the year. And so when we were assessing for next year's audit plan, they did not carry over due to the new audit priorities. However, you can always bring that to our attention and we can reassess that. Because we are still looking to hire a new employee, so we are definitely going to need more audits, so we can definitely put that still tentatively within the next audit plan if that's at the request of the audit committee, and move forward and intercede with that as best as we can.
Right, but that doesn't address how New Hampstead K-8 as a particular target did not make the priorities, because when it was set to be audited, we set that as a priority. So we lost employees, and then it got removed because of that reason. I'm trying to focus on New Hampstead K-8 as an institution not being below capacity in terms of staff.
Well, the risk so the process of some of East East-Lost audits in the past were due to like final payment reviews in those type of situations, and that's where K-8 came up. It was just in the rotation. Those kind of issues have never been brought to the attention of the audit department for us to consider as a risk. The K-8 school was just in the rotation of that final payment review to make sure that process was completed correctly. Okay. So it was more of the rotation and not any additional risks that may have come up in relation to that school.
Okay, so there was no consideration of that particular school as having greater or lesser need?
Nothing that had come across our desk in the internal audit department has been brought to our attention. Okay. But like I said, we can really look back into that to see if we need to put that into the rotation. So I appreciate you and your comment, and I'll make note of that.
Thank you.
All right. Leah?
As also the artificial surfaces, the athletic fields and playgrounds, again, due to the loss of that employee that we had, we could not complete that. And then when we assessed, and I'll explain our process for the risk assessment, when we discussed the audit plan, it did not carry over due to the new audit priorities that had come up. There was no concerns, further concerns about that.
And both of those were construction audits, right?
Correct.
Right. Those weren't process. So if New Hampstead needs to get an operational audit, that's certainly something we can take. These were just East-Lost audits.
These were East-Lost audits.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So the cell phone usage in classroom, that one is going to be a carryover, and we'll discuss that further in the audit plan. The audit of transportation parts inventory is still going to be carried over into fiscal '25. The audit of athletics equipment inventory, that will be incorporated in, if you all approve the asset management audit. And then the audit of purchasing processes. In our process of talking with management, we realized if we did it as a whole, it would be too cumbersome, and we really couldn't focus on targeted needs. So we're breaking up the purchasing processes into individual audits throughout the year next year. And you'll see that when we discuss the audit plan. All right, and then the other informational item we wanted to provide is that the second senior internal audit position should open in July. So we'll be looking again for that other piece, the other person. So the management action plan, I wanted to highlight two changes to the report. So now you see kind of a color coding to the top when it comes to the title. So if you see red, which we do not have red means that they did not complete the information. If you see orange, that means they're in progress, they're not behind, we're on schedule. And if you see green, they completed it. Now, if you go to page 3, you will see after the release of the materials, we were informed that the new organization position will not have the district grant writer. And as you can see, our follow-up wasn't until July of 2024. So we will provide an update on management actions in this area in our next report to you.
Thank you. Any comment from management? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a question. This is, page 8 in our packet. Let me see, which one is this? It was a HR recommendation. One moment. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it's the second page of the management plan, second row, identifying the roles and functions of the district's departments involved in each phase of grant program and roles during the donation process. The map item was to develop a visual format that showed this process. And it's completed, but can you tell me where that is? Where that lives? Or
That
where
lives
it's available?
in-house procedures that is provided. And this is the grants and donations that you're referring to, yeah. So that lives under, at this time, under data and accountability. They originally created that in relation to the scope of the pre-approval process and stuff, so it's in-house procedures.
Okay, so but is it publicly available? Like, can someone,
Not that I know of at this time.
okay, can it get shared with the audit committee?
I'm sure that would be just fine. I'll get that for you.
Thank you. And then, same page, I think this is right. Some of these HR recommendations, same page, last row, in response to the audit comment, a training program will be created providing an overview of grant process and donation process. A lot of these things look like they ought to live in an HR manual, so are these actions kind of moving into long-lived HR processes? Do we know that from management?
Is the training program the last one? Develop a training of these processes?
Yeah, it's supposed to live under a new grant writer who hasn't come yet.
Page 3.
Yeah, it's the second, yeah, it's page 3 of the map. Sorry, page 8 of the packet, sorry. Yeah, page 3 of the map, last row.
There you go.
There's a training program, and a grants manager is going to develop it, and I just happen to be thinking about HR manuals at these times. Some of these things sound like things that need to live and be in practice perpetually and not just be an audit response. Is that something that's happening?
So the grant writer position actually will fall under performance strategy and innovation, not within HR. So I don't know that it will live in a human resources manual.
I was just thinking because I'm working on a manual at this time, and it talks about who does what. So, and it's training, so I'm thinking professional development. So let me rephrase. Is there going to be a manual where this is going to live forever, this training program?
The process will be documented and a training will be provided. But what department it lives in, it
doesn't
wouldn't
have to
be in HR. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Nope. Thank you.
All right, the next informational item, what we're going to do, and for those who have been on the committee for a while, we have, and that would be Hoskins Brown.
Until she gets booted off.
We, internal audit typically bring some informational items to the audit committee just to make the audit committee aware of our processes or what's going on in our industry. So moving forward, every kind of quarterly, we will bring one of these to you. But we wanted to start today with the internal audit process. We provide this document to management at the start of each audit. This is where we describe our process. So in that, first off, we have to say this, we are governed by the government auditing standards. That's, if you ever hear us say the yellow book, that is that. That is from the, that's instituted by Congress. One of the things that I want to highlight here is you all actually play a role in this in the reporting section. So when we get there, you'll see how, as reporting out, how you play a role in that as well. But there are three distinct phases. There's the planning, the field work, and then the reporting. So the planning, this is after the risk assessment, of which we'll talk later. But in the planning, this is where we've kind of worked, or prior to that, I've already worked with management. We kind of already identified risks. This is where we're zoning in really on, our purpose of this is to identify the risk to the organization as they relate to the activity, but in a more intensive way. So are the risks more in traditional, are there more financial risk? Is there more operational risk, or are there more performance risk? Because this is where we start really building our objectives and zone in on the scope of the audit. And we work with management as this, because oftentimes management will give us some recommendations like, hey, we need you to look in this area as well. So this is not for us to be alone. We work with management in this process. This is also where we gather the background data, where we get to understand how everything works and functions. We review records and files and interview people. And we also look at small samples, not intensive samples at this point, just more smaller samples. And this is where we develop the audit program. So an audit program is really our steps of what we take throughout that audit. The next phase is the field work. This is where it's more intensive. So we already have the objectives, we've got our steps, now we're completing that process. This is where we gather that evidence at this point to address any risks that we may have identified and to see how, how they're functioning, if they're functioning. Our interviews with managers and staff become more intensive. We are more direct in the information that we're trying to gain. And again, we gather the information in order to develop the condition, finding, or observation that we find. And then, of course, all that goes into a report, and this is where you play a role in hearing the reports that we provide. So after the completion of the field work, we do prepare a draft report, and that draft report we have is often a discussion draft of which we talk to management, where we say this is what we found, and this is where they come back and say, oh, no, we don't see that way. We have healthy discussions back and forth, or sometimes we're all in line, and that's okay. But we come to an agreement of what would be best to move the district better in continuous improvement. So the results of that meeting is what gets presented to you all in the audit committee. And so with that, management also responds with a management action plan, of which you all often see, which is now incorporated into the report. And again, that comes to you all approve, and it goes to the board, and then is presented on the public website. Now, our standards also require a follow-up, and that is conducted through the summary of reports, and I'll talk more about that next month when we bring that report to you.
Anybody have any questions? But thank you, Leah. That's very valuable. All right. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes by anyone that read them. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from last month's meeting. All in favor? The minutes are approved. Leah?
All right, so our the audit of concessions in school stores, this was the work of our intern, Nia King. We're sorry that she cannot be here today, but she is back home enjoying her summer break, but she will return back to us in August when school starts at Savannah State University. So the audit of concession in school stores, we identified one condition with two findings where improvements were needed. So we highlighted this rating as needs improvement. The objectives of our audit was to review the reconciliation procedures and review and test for compliance of those reconciliation, revenue, and inventory procedures. The audit was at the request of the Finance Department. The audit included transactional and physical surveys of the district's concession and school stores. And our field work was conducted between August of 2023 and May of 2024. We selected a judgmental sample by reviewing each of the schools' school net cash net accounts. Those are the student activity fund accounts. Our first tier focus was to select all schools that had specifically identified accounts labeled concessions and school stores. In our second tier focus, we selected schools that had a FBLA, that's the Future Business Leaders of America account, or other accounts that functioned as a school store or had a concession component. So of a total of 12 schools were selected, comprising of 19 accounts and 268 transactions. So school stores and concessions live within the Student Activity Fund function and serves as a fundraiser and an opportunity for students to learn business-oriented activities within a learning environment. Within our scope of 12 schools, there was a total of $187,000 in revenue. This included activities from school stores, concessions, and other money-raising activities. However, we could not accurately distinguish the different type of receipts because the receipt descriptions did not define the type of receipt. So although it appeared it may have been concession, it wasn't necessarily always labeled concession. So this revenue total is based off of the account that we saw some transactions as a whole, but that doesn't mean all of those were necessarily based in school store or concession functions. So our main finding was the monitoring and training of procedures. The control environment over student activity funds is not strong enough to ensure the misuse of funds or inventories is not occurring within the district. The Finance Department has defined procedures within the handbook for school stores and concessions. However, the Finance Department does not ensure compliance with these procedures. We could not conduct our review of the reconciliation process of the inventories because the documentation from the school sites were not completed. In addition, the training for the reconciliation of these activities is not conducted in a manner that provides understanding of their functionality in relation to the receipting procedures. So in our sample, we found 12 schools actually complied with the deposit and expenditure procedure process. So of 268 transactions, they did follow the deposit to the bank process very well. We found no errors at all. It is when you have to document for the inventory or the profit and loss of these areas is where the documentation was incomplete. All the monthly forms required for concessions also were not completed and reported to the district student activity fund coordinator. The same observation occurred for school stores as well. These discrepancies can potentially cause a loss of revenue. Also, with no proper compliance in the reporting of profit or loss of revenue, there's a financial risk on the monthly reported revenue and expenses that is reported in the school category transaction report. One of the root causes that we found for this noncompliance is there's a lack of monitoring. The Finance Department does not monitor compliance with the form requirements for these areas to ensure inventories are being maintained properly and accounted for accounting purposes. We also, back in 2015, conducted a district-wide student activity fund audit. And one of the components we looked at concessions in school stores. And in that audit, we found that there were multiple months when the monthly forms were not turned in to the student activity fund coordinator, and no action was taken to ensure schools were in compliance. In our follow-up review of the 2015 report, we reviewed evidence to support that the action described in the management action plans were taking place. However, it appears the continuation of the previous practice does not exist. Now, I do want to highlight this, since 2015, the entire accounting department at all levels, except for 2 employees, have left their positions. So at the conclusion of this audit, I do want to add, the finance department was working with the financial system vendor to identify solutions for streamlining the accounting process for inventories and accounting processes for student activity funds. The other root cause is the training structure of these activities. The training for student activity funds and concessions is not conducted in a manner that provides understanding of the procedures functionally in relation to the other receipting and reporting procedures to account for the conducted activities, such as for inventories and profit and loss. Training options are available through the finance department. Yearly meetings for secretaries are conducted, and online training is available. In our internal internal control questionnaire to the secretaries of the schools of which we sampled, we had a respondent rate of 85%. 36% felt the school is not familiar with district policies and procedures, and training is not provided to improve work competencies. So our findings are based on that the control environment is weakened when management does not conduct a continuous monitoring of compliance with these procedures to ensure that there is not a misuse of funds, as well as a training program that supports employees is key to strengthening the environment, because it builds the competence skills to reduce the errors and to identify the misuse of theft. So our recommendations to the Office of Finance was to develop a cyclical monitoring program of student activity funds based on the risk assessment developed by the finance that includes analyzing not only the basic procedures, but also the more analytical ones. They should develop a tracking system of these errors to identify trends and errors to determine whether there's gaps in training or more if there's an issue with a discipline that needs to have disciplinary issues due to a staff member, due to the outcomes of the program. They need to reevaluate and develop mandatory training requirements, methods for training for student activity funds to assure the uniformity of the instructions to staff, because in some cases the sponsors do the training to the school site level and not the finance department. This should also include, but not limited to, group sessions, one-on-one, and online opportunities. And then also develop a line of communication to management when findings from the program provide evidence to produce a need for additional training or potential disciplinary action. So management's response is that they will complete a risk assessment to identify and analyze any potential risk within the program. They will assess basic and advanced procedures outlined in the handbook to identify any weaknesses and implement control measures to mitigate those risks. They're also going to consider implementing a school window that is a new system to provide the district with more advanced integrated payment solution when it comes to student activity funds. That would kind of reduce the transfer of cash. Also, the Student Activity Fund Coordinator will develop an Excel spreadsheet to track these errors to identify in the monthly audit conducted by the coordinator. In using this tracking system, we'll be able to identify employees who need additional training, as well as target topics with the highest error rates. So it's not just the individual, but also where the staff are making the most errors in. So as noted in the handbook, the training is mandatory for principals to receive in order to get access to the system. It is also required that secretaries and backup secretaries attend this training. The Student Activity Fund Handbook is in the final stages of a revision at this time, and a new section in the revised handbook will address additional training requirements identified by the error tracking system that will be implemented in response to the recommendation above. Schools identified having error trends will be offered additional one-on-one training for specialized training classes. As well, the Student Activity Fund Coordinator held the first boot camp training class in March of 2024. This class was boot camp class, formerly known as the Student Activity Fund's Handbook Training Class, will now be offered quarterly instead of yearly. In April of 2024, the Student Activity Fund Coordinator sent the first newsletter out. This newsletter will be sent monthly and will also include topics such as due dates, additional instructions for processes with frequent errors, as well as upcoming training opportunities. And then last, the implementation of the new error tracking system will allow the Student Activity Fund Coordinator to identify schools who need additional training as well as the topics. And this will be copied, the results of the error rates and any information will be copied to not only to the financial division team, but also the network superintendent and principal on all corresponding to address those needs. And their area of completion, and all these areas will be in August of 2024.
Thank you, Leah. Are there any comments? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Is all of this done on paper reporting, or is it electronic reporting? So microphone. I'm sorry. So all of this is done on paper reporting?
Yes.
That seems to be a glaring issue. If you're requiring, are you looking into an electronic reporting system?
Yes, that is the, was that the school window, I was
Okay.
trying to remember the name, the school window program that they're looking into, yes.
Okay, so basically, you have inconsistent training, it's paper reporting, and then you have one person that's an SAF coordinator who's going to use a paper Excel spreadsheet to monitor errors that are made on paper reporting documents. Is that the resolution, or are we moving towards something that's more modernized?
At this time, that was the information that management gave to me, but I would assume with the new school window and the components that it has the opportunity of any report outs, that will probably fall in line if those options are available. Is that
Okay.
correct, Rosalind?
Is it a monetary issue in order to get electronic reporting?
It just hadn't been set up before, but the contract has been signed and we're set for implementation within the next month.
Okay, and when do we think like an electronic reporting system would be set up in the future? How long?
You should-
Please get on the mic.
Good morning. Contract was signed with School Windows this week. We are setting up the implementation process within the next month with our goal of having the first parts, the beta on some of the organizations in August. So our goal is to have that done within the first quarter of this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I think my comment is aligned with Ms. Owens. My question is for Ms. Underwood, has this improved any in the last 10 years? Just generally okay, that's what I thought. It did not feel like student activity funds had improved. It's like they've been snake bit forever. And kind of necessary messiness because this is money handling for selling candy or doing whatever is happening at a school. I will say that it's appeared messy since 1986 when I was the school store girl at Beach selling M&Ms and Cheerwine and just knowing that it was not well run and well managed. I'm glad that we're moving to an electronic solution, and I'm wondering, is it something that's just necessary messiness because of the great diversity of things that's happening in a school store setting, and you're dealing with learners coming in, doing things, staff members? Is it just messy because of the entity that it is? And that's one question, in your professional opinion. And the other question is, do we think that there's the time and likelihood that an electronic solution is going to be helpful when during a school day, basically people's hair is on fire, and that might just be one more thing that doesn't get implemented properly?
In my observation, between even from the previous year, previous audit to now, the process is not understood it's a very accounting-oriented process, and you're having somebody who is not accounting-oriented to respond. So the training is where the gap really is. Because there are some schools that do get it. You see that they're almost there, but they're not seeing the connection. So I'm pretty confident that once that information is understood, it will be because it's a very simple form. These forms, some of them are just daily tally, like how many did we sell? Some of that wasn't even being done. And those are what we call them, if you see in the reports, called the money count form as well. Is not, they weren't entering the change fund, like where's your start change fund to your end change fund? They weren't understanding that relationship either. So it was really, to me, the gap is the training. And I think once they get that is done by the advisor of the group. Most of the FBLA accounts, or especially at Woodville Tompkins, the ones that function and have a lot of stores, there's a lot of there's a lot of information provided down to even the student level, how to have a business. So you see more compliance in those areas because that is actually implemented into the curriculum of what they're teaching the kids, and so it's all the way through. So you see in those areas where it functions really well. But it's the concessions, really, that's the loose one. Because a lot of times we have observed where you have one inventory, but multiple baseball, football, different ones touching it. So there's too many hands touching the pot as well. So I think once you streamline all that, get the training in place, it will work. Because sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Thank you. I think my opinion of this is that we're still going to have challenges when this comes to us as in a governance way. It is I could be wrong, but I perceive it as a lost area for us because it costs money and time for us to do all these trainings. And it costs money and time. There's a potential cost of trust for families who feel like money is not being handled properly. So it's small amounts of money that are being handled in these activities, but the cost is trust if people think that, or people experience that it's not being managed well. And on the governance side, we just have to do what we have to do to support it, because it's not at this point something that we're considering taking away. It's not something that practically seems could go cashless, like we did athletic tickets. That's not something that seems like it would work in a school environment. But I just think it's worth noting that from the governance side, it's not that we think it's okay that we haven't improved in this in over a decade, but the moving parts are extremely difficult.
It is, and like I said, I was really in the financial literacy learning component, that also, those areas where that is put emphasis on to have the concession or the school store, those function really well. But for those that are not designed for student learning, tend to be the more loose ones.
Any other comments? I would just echo what Dr. Huskins-Brown said. Also, I think 2 months ago, we brought in tickets, and we were loosey-goosey on tickets, and we're loosey-goosey on student activity funds. And again, these are, to your point about money, it's very important that we steward these dollars well. So if it was 12 schools and roughly 200K, then maybe it's 600K across the district, plus the 300K from student tickets last time. $1 million here, $1 million there, and then suddenly we're talking about real money. So, and again, it's good to hear that the deposit procedures were being followed, so we don't think we're seeing anything. But again, it's other people's money, so we need to just make sure we're doing what we need to do.
I do see this as a great learning opportunity for those kids that are in FBLA, as far as looking at profit and loss statements, and as we move to doing this electronically, sharing this with the students and letting students see how businesses are run. And how important inventory is, and how important it is to have a profit and loss statement. So I see this as a great opportunity.
Any other comments?
Yeah.
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Hold on.
There's more.
Did you want to speak?
And there's more.
I think I just wanted to say that we don't think it's a lost cause at this point. We, Finance Division asked for this audit because we knew that coming off of COVID, that there were just so many opportunities for a loss. And during that time, we also saw we needed to get away from the cash handling. So we asked for the audit because we wanted a starting point. We wanted to see exactly what was happening out in the schools so we could know where to start. So with that, we now have a student activity coordinator that's actually looking at the reconcilements, everybody's cash, their bank accounts on a monthly basis. So that's been done now for the past couple of years. So we're comfortable with that. So we're trying to get a handle on everybody with the cash. So as I said earlier, we signed the contract, Larry signed the contract this week for School Window. It's a software solution that's comparable to what our tax assessor's office is using, Government Window. This is School Window, to set up the inventories electronically for the different organizations within the schools. So we will have that electronically, their inventories, along with them being able to do electronic payments. And we're all set as a part of this program that they will be assisting us with training the staff. And as they train the staff, we're going to have them train finance staff, so we'll be able to continue with the training. So as we said, we saw this as an issue that we weren't comfortable with, and we think you're going to see a big difference in the next coming months.
That's great news. Thank you. Anything else? I will entertain a motion to accept the report. It's been properly moved and accepted that we accept the audit of concession school stores. All in favor? Aye. The report is accepted.
All right, the next item is the audit plan for fiscal 2025. So what I would like to highlight here, so as of on the first page under introduction, we wanted to show you a calculation of our total hours. The reason why we wanted to highlight that is next month, we're going to give you our benchmark report for this past year, as well as our projected status moving forward. And you should see these hours connected into what we project into the next year based on your approval of the audit plan. And again, that could change if we hire another employee, but as of right now, that's consisted of 3, even though we have 4 staff, we have 4 people in our office at this time with, because Cheryl Hoffman does, from time to time, does support us in some of the audits that we function, so we included her in those totals. So I wanted to go over the risk assessment procedures so you understand our process. Remember, in the internal audit process, that's when we're starting to do the report. But before we even get there, we have to actually do a risk assessment. You know, what are the needs of the district? What are the higher risks as well? So what we do is we not only consider quantifiable factors such as size, audit frequency, and dollars, but we look at the qualitative. We look at the internal audit and, internal control environment and the risks of not accomplishing board's goals. So the risk assessment by our government auditing standards is only needed every 3 years, but we do it every year to make sure that we are assessing and relevant to the needs of the district. So how do we do this? So first we acquire information throughout the year by us, going to training events, listening to, the questions that are asked in these events, as well as listening to what's being said in board meetings or board committee meetings, as well as media reports that come out. We hold discussions with district management to determine areas of risk that have been identified, and also obtain feedback on specific areas being considered. So it's not that we go solo on this, we do get their feedback. As well as we survey all employees, any employee with email access, to get their feedback on what they think is a risk within the district. And on top of that, we bring that together and codify it in ways of areas of risk, looking in whether it's a department or whether it's a particular program or a particular control in itself that we see consistent people reporting out on. And then once we do that, we conduct a financial analysis, determine, in that particular area, how much budget was spent, total amount of expenditures, and in the areas and activities where the district money was spent. We also look at when was the last time we audited the area, as well as if there's, we do look if there's a high ethics report complaint in that area as well. So like I said, we develop this each year based on those risk assessments. And then the audit committee, of course, we're at this stage right now. We bring this to you for you to approve, and then it goes into to the board. Now, from time to time, there could be unforeseen requests by the district management. If that does occur, after the report is done, after you approve this report, we do come back to you and make a change to the audit plan at your approval. So the next page, we want to highlight, again, giving more information about the types of audits and services that we provide. And again, the reason why we're doing this is in our next projected kind of status reports that we provide to you, we want to be a little more in depth so you see where our activities are going and what we do. So there's different types of audits that we actually conduct. So first there's the academic audits, and that's the one that Jack O'Connor conducts. It's an independent evaluation of the district's instructional programs and activities that the district carries out. And the purpose of the evaluation is to determine whether these activities are effective in meeting the board's goals as they relate to delivering the educational services to our students. The next one is just a compliance. This is really where we're reviewing, are you complying to any rule, reg, policy, decision, or procedures that exist? Performance audits are more in depth. They are conducted to ensure that they identify areas not only adhering, so there is a compliance component, but we look to see the effective and efficiency. In other words, the effective piece is the outcomes of the program being achieved, and are they maximizing the dollars to support that program. Now, whenever you hear non-audit services, that is conducted at the request of management. You all do not see these reports. They don't come to you. That is strictly because they do not qualify as an audit from the government auditing standards. They are at the request of management on agreed upon procedures, and it serves to assist management in their decision making. And again, because this report does not fall under as an audit under GAGAS, the report is directed only to district management as well as to the superintendent of schools.
Can we clarify? So, praise and applause for finance for requesting the audit that they just mentioned. That's really excellent. So can you clarify the difference? So management can ask for examinations that are formally an audit, like we just saw, or that are just a review and not an audit, yes?
Correct.
That's what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Yes. We also have in-house services, and what we're codifying that is, this includes, first off, their function has to be in support of the superintendent and the Board of Education needs. And in that, what that means is this includes areas of consulting and advisory services, for risk analysis, or sometimes when a new program's being implemented, we're asked to be on part of that process. We monitor the ethics hotline. We give the ethics trainings for the school district. We support the policy maintenance process, and in those type of in-house services where it's kind of routine activities. So on the next page is our audit plan. So our carryover is the speech language pathologist program that should be brought to you in August, that we are still on task for that. And again, that's an academic audit. The purchasing process, this is going to be broken down into multiple. Some of them are compliance, but some of them will be performance. As we mentioned before, the cell phone usage in the classroom and the impact to the instructional environment report is a carryover, so we will continue with that one, as well as the transportation parts inventory.
So yeah, one question.
So can you clarify more about the cell phone usage audit, what you're looking for?
So remember, as I mentioned before in the internal audit process, we've only done the risk assessment part, not the planning. So we do not have the defined objectives at this time, but really what we're looking at based on the things that have come in, and that might change based on discussions with management. But our key risk that we saw was the consistency among the classrooms. Some teachers pull them up, some don't, some, then it becomes a discipline issue, and then sometimes it's not a discipline issue. So that's where we were finding things. But we might, and this was considered too, look at the impact of employees using their cell phone. Because you have students that are getting in trouble that they can't use their phone, but then we've gotten complaints, well, you say my child can't have their cell phone, but the teacher's on their cell phone. So, we might look at that as a package, but that's only, based on the risk assessment. That's not a true defined any objective at this time. We have to do that within the planning, when we work with management and really define the objectives. So the objectives have not been defined at this time.
One more question. So when you're working on those objectives, would you like any input from the board on what we'd like for you to?
More than welcome.
Thank you. All right.
Yes, definitely
All right.
more than welcome.
Thank you.
We will reach out for that.
Yes, ma'am.
I know where our president is going with this. I already see the breadcrumbs on the ground. I think that one place, we had a lot of discussion about allowing phones in the district prior to allowing phones in the district. So I think that it would be helpful to pull those old presentations. There were a couple of presentations by staff about what they thought the problems would be. I think particularly in whatever meeting it was that we approved the policy. So I think it would be good to go back and look at the metrics of what did we think was going to happen? What did we think, because what we thought was going to happen, happened. But, mixed enforcement of the phones, underwhelming academic use of phones by some young people, great deal of academic enhancement by other folks, whether or not teachers were prepared and whether their plans were aligned with the use of phone technology. But anyway, there was a whole list of things that we said, this is going to be great because it will do these things. And these are the problems that we expect. It'd be great to go back and do a retrospective and use that information in how we examine it.
Thank you for that insight. And I really appreciate to hear that there are some concerns from the board, because what brought this up here was concerns from our survey from the from the teachers and staff. So it's coming, from both, all levels. So I look forward to this. The next area is the compliance audits. So of course, we're going to hit the business process reviews. Now, this is subject to change, because if there's a new principle that pops up that we haven't seen already come through the board docs, that could happen. But most of the ones that we are conducting next year are follow-up. We have only 2 3-year reviews that we're conducting. And as of right now, there is 3 new principals, and then there was 1 that the principal requested. And principals do have that opportunity for us to come in if they feel that they need for us to look at that. And I'm sorry, that is 4 new principals, not 3. Let me correct that. All right, another compliance audit, we're going to integrate a grant audit as well as contract audits. I do want to highlight these grant audits are not the big ones that are constantly monitored. These are the smaller ones. These are the ones that probably didn't even hit the Board of Education for approval because they were, so small in nature. But we feel like we need to start kind of touching on those as to support also to see what the grant and donation process procedures that they're newly implementing to make sure that is being continuously monitored a little bit, but also to support school sites and what they need to do to understand what grants are and their responsibilities, roles, as well as the changes that finance is doing. And we always conduct contract audits. But again, all this, we do not have anyone defined at this time because we want to work with management and, we see our risk and what we think we might need to see, but we also want to hear from them and we, can be in conclusion because we want to help them as best as we can in this process. So the first purchasing process that is going to be broken down is going to be the audit of purchase card practices within the district. So the scope of this will kind of review these purchase card transactions for compliance for the intended purposes of what they were used for and if they were misused, as well as the reconciliation process of the purchase cards. So the next areas are academic audits. These following projects will be conducted. The one that we're looking at is one, student attendance. The scope of this audit will include a review of student attendance trends through the district and identifying the impacts to the academic performance. The next academic audit will be the district grading practices. The scope of this will include the review of the district trends and consistency patterns with the focus on academic rigor. George?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading.
If you would not mind, the metrics that you are going to evaluate for attendance, would you please share that with the Board Accountability Committee liaison? I'm really trying to get them interested in doing a principal components analysis of all the data that look like they affect attendance. And I don't think they're convinced yet, but I'm working on it. And if you could tell us the things that you plan to measure, those would probably be high priority factors to look at
Okay.
as we try to do some data analysis.
Okay, we will do that.
Thank you.
And the last academic audit is the student promotion. The scope of this audit will include the review of the district's promotion and retention practices at all grade levels. And the performance audits that will be conducted, as again, you'll see here is one of the purchasing processes that we have broken out, is to look at the competitive process within the purchasing process. And what that means is we'll look at, the RFP process, the bid process, the annual contract process, any of those, the annual contract isn't necessarily a competitive process, but we're going to look at that as well. But we're also going to look to see, does this process meet the financial needs of the district in its timeliness and its methods, not only just for compliance to industry standards. And we're also going to see if the financial needs are met in a timely, efficient, and effective manner. Because some of the concerns that have been brought to us is, oh, I have a grant, I needed to purchase this, but now I can't spend the money for the grant in this year because I was supposed to send it and purchasing didn't get it to me in time. So there's these comments that are being made, but we're not seeing, we're going to try to identify really the landscape and what is happening, as well as making sure that the processes, they may be in compliance in how they're doing things, but is it really meeting the needs, and is there an opportunity to be able to change that process or improve that process? And the other two is the audit of booster clubs. This scope will include a review of requirements of school district functions within this process, as well as the performance of the clubs in relation to their financial and supporting requirements to the school they serve. This has come up because many concerns have been brought through the internal audit department concerning what a booster club is doing, where did the booster club money go to, because the principal, based on our policy, is ultimately responsible. There's supposed to be bylaws, they're supposed to have a financial review, and we're finding that this isn't always happening. So it's more of being able to visually see what they're providing to us, but not understanding, are we really looking at their bank account? Because they have their own bank account, because none of this goes through student activity funds. So, and all that is written within policy, so we're going to try to identify what's going on out there. So it's not going to be a big audit in the sense that most booster clubs only sit in high schools, but we're going to look to see overall how that's working. The audit of yes.
On booster clubs. So as part of this audit, making sure that, and correct me on this, so these booster clubs do they have their own 501c3s?
They
and-
should.
Okay, and yeah, exactly. That's what I'm concerned
They should.
about. But making sure that they do have that.
Yes.
Also making sure that they're filing 990s. And,
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yep,
Thanks.
we're looking,
Thank
we're
you.
looking at the whole, like I said, it's not going to be, it's not district-wide. I mean, we just, so we're going to look at all that to make sure that those components, as well as whatever's written in the bylaws, that both the district and the Booster Club is in compliance as well. The other audit that we will conduct is the audit of asset management. The scope of this audit will include a review of the management practices at all levels, which includes the district level as well as school site level, for compliance to asset management requirements, and to review a cost analysis techniques for cost savings and efficiency improvements. Like, are we doing cost analysis for athletic equipment? Because like I said, finance had requested us to do that to see really what money's out there. And when we're trying to provide, when the district's trying to provide information to the Board of Education on the needs, are they really giving, an actual picture of what the needs are for the athletics department? There are, basketballs need to be purchased, basketball nets need to be purchased, volleyball nets, wrestling mats, all those kind of things. Do you have a cost analysis piece on that? Even though the asset management, in the sense from a district level, is, 5,000 or more at this time, they might be in compliance with this, but we also want to look at, are we looking at cost analysis of this equipment to see, such as school nutrition equipment? That's very costly. Are we really looking and maintaining the asset management of that area? We've got white fleet, we've got yellow fleet. There's a whole host of inventory of assets that meet the definition of asset for the state and reporting, and we may be in compliance on that based on what our external auditors say, but are we really doing that cost effectiveness in making sure we are maintaining the items and understanding how much these costs really are for these areas?
Thank you. Any comments? Other comments? All right, we will adopt I'll entertain a motion to adopt the FY 2025 audit plan.
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adopt the FY 2025 audit plan. All in favor? The plan is adopted. That is the end of the agenda, and at that point, we ask for a motion to adjourn. Oh.
One more thing. Our next meeting, I will so move, but also, our next meeting is July 25th. It is challenging to get through packet material that we get on Monday for a Thursday meeting, especially in this period of family reunions, vacation, and all that. So my question is, do we know what size the material is going to be for the 25th meeting? And is it possible to get it the 18th at the very latest, the Friday before the meeting? Because as our superintendent noted on the news last night, a lot of us have second jobs. And so that time is important. Time is important, and even though we didn't have much this week, it was a little bit of a struggle for me to get it read. So
Yeah,
do we know?
usually, excuse me, usually Friday is when we send it out, but we were waiting on a response in a particular area, so that's why it was delayed. But yes, we will go back to our normal projected, and we will work to improve also in getting those responses a little quicker so it doesn't delay us. Because we like to review the stuff before we just, and have that conversation with management, like, okay, you didn't answer this question and so forth, so it allows for that. So we will adjust our schedule to move back to our Friday date that we do
Thank
that.
you. And it may encourage them to know that we actually do read the whole packet. Like, they spend the time developing a response. We
Yes.
read and think about and try to internalize those responses. So thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, that is my motion that we adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.